recognize that I'm the only thing standing between you and those delicious cookies on the back table, so I'll be brief as well. And try to think of some questions while I talk for the next 2 minutes, because I enjoy the chance to engage in that. It's been a real honor to serve as your state senator for the last 4 years in the state senate. I represent the 27th district, which is the people of Wayne County, Western Stark County, and large portions of Summit County as well. And I'm here because I recognize that this work matters. Mental illness affects every one of us, every one of our families. And we all have individuals that we love and care about who are impacted by mental illness. That said, I'm not an expert on mental illness. Many of you in this room are, as service providers and as family members, and so I recognize the importance of hearing from you. I can't do my job as your member of the Senate adequately unless I hear from you on the important issues that matter, and that's why I really welcome that type of interaction that I get from the people that I serve. I hold a monthly office hours throughout my district in Summit, Stark, and Wayne County, usually on a Saturday, and people come in and talk to me. I engage very actively on social media, so if you use Facebook or Twitter, you can find me on there, and I answer the questions directly that people have, and I'm always welcome, always open to taking your phone calls. There's some things that we've made some progress on, and it was mentioned earlier, the sentencing reform that we did over the last few years, and that was a bipartisan piece of legislation, and thankfully there is still an opportunity to do some of that kind of good work across the aisle, and I was proud to be a part of that as a member of the Criminal Justice Committee, so that we can really focus on getting people the help they need instead of putting them in jail. We've seen firsthand the results of that, and it's become a real national model in a lot of ways, where people are looking at what's being done here in Ohio to again make sure that people can get the help they need instead of ending up simply in a prison, which is in many cases more costly and detrimental to them. There are some things that we need to work on that I've identified, and this may be largely symbolic, but I recognize that this matters. And that is, I guess with all due respect to the framers, we have some language in our state constitution which has outlived its usefulness, that is offensive as it relates to those with mental illness, as well as in the state revised code. And I think that we can go through and clean that up so that those outdated and outmoded words no longer exist in our state law. And that's something that I want to work on. In fact, a friend of mine, State Senator Eric Kearney, introduced a bill on that last week. You know, it's something that I believe that we have a partnership. It's important that we have the services for the people in our community that need help. Many of you are critical in providing those services, and it's important that those services be funded adequately. So I'm open to increasing funding for areas of mental health and addiction. I think that it's important for us to be very thoughtful about that. Also, I'm glad to see over the last year that Ohio, although the process has not been as I would have liked it to, I wish it had gone through the legislature, but the governor made the right decision to expand Medicaid into Ohio for the population that was previously not served by that, and that brings important dollars back to Ohio so that they can help people that are in need. I bring 10 years of military experience, and now having served in the Senate for 4 years, I'm proud of the record I've built as a bipartisan problem solver, someone who's not afraid to cross the aisle and work with my friends and colleagues on the other side of the aisle, because we're all in this together as Ohioans. My name is Frank LaRose. I'm proud to be your state senator, and I'd be honored to have your support. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
If you're not afraid to cross the aisle, I just think you ought to move into Congress in Washington, D.C. Let's get it over with.
We've got our challenges in Columbus, and we need bipartisan work down there. There aren't too many people that they come into every conversation focused on who's wearing the red hat and who's wearing the blue hat, and far too much energy is spent on scoring points and trying to make the other side look bad. Each of us in the Senate represent 350,000 Ohioans, and every Ohioan deserves a voice. And just because I'm in the majority and one of my friends who's a Democrat happens to be in the minority doesn't mean that the people they represent don't get their voice heard. So, yes, sir, in the back.
Frank, I have one question. I have a friend who, is there any way that you see on something on sentencing, scheduling, been readjusted to the status harsh? Is there a way that life without parole and there was a drug offense, could that be changed?
Well, I don't know the specific sentence area that you're talking about, but we did a lot of work on leveling the crime. For example, the sentence for powder cocaine and crack cocaine, and making sure that, yeah.
He got sentenced, but he got a life without parole. But now since they changed the sentencing, does the life without parole come off?
I don't know the specifics of that case. I wouldn't think so, having been a decided case, but there was a real disparity that existed. And again, people that have had substance issues, they need help. They don't need to be put in jail. When I served in Iraq, we learned this when we were working with the Iraqi police, and we'd catch a bad guy who was building bombs or whatever, and we'd put him in jail, and he'd get out of jail a year later as a better criminal in some cases, because he was just behind bars with other bad elements. Now, what we need for those that have issues of mental health or addiction, they need to get help. They don't just need to be locked up in jail. And far too many times, law enforcement, and you guys know this, law enforcement ends up interacting with those in the community that have mental health. And I chair the Public Safety Committee, and we've heard a lot of testimony on this, and I'm trying to work to encourage more of the CIT training that officers get now, so that those men and women who are out there on the front lines in public safety, they interact with people. They need to recognize, hey, this is not just a person being rowdy. This is a person that has a mental issue, and they need help, and they need to be handled in a different way. So we're starting to be smart on crime instead of just tough on crime. There was this idea for a long time of people, got to be tough on crime, throw the book at them. That's nonsense. We need to be smart on crime and help people get their lives back on track. Sir?
Frank, we've worked together down in Columbus, and I just want your opinion. We're 15 years into a Supreme Court decision that's declared our funding for education unconstitutional. And I've worked with the Education Committee and the State School Board, but it seems like nothing's been moved forward on that. What is your opinion on that, and what are you doing to gander bipartisan support to move this equitable funding for education forward?
Sure. The DeRolf decisions that you referred to had sort of two components, and one of them was a real disparity that existed as it relates to school facilities. The good news is, and I'd like to start with the good news, is that there's been real progress. Billions of dollars, real money has been spent in Ohio to build new schools. And look just around Akron here and all over Northeast Ohio. We've made progress in some of our poor Appalachian areas of the state. We've made real progress. We've been able to build better schools in the state. And that's one important step. In fact, that's something that's being looked at even, like I said, in other states around the nation, where they say, hey, Ohio School Facilities Commission has done good work. The second part is adequate and equitable funding for education. That's our constitutional responsibility. Ohio was really progressive about this at our founding. When our state was founded, we were I think the first state in the nation to enshrine that concept in our Constitution. Adequate and equitable funding for public education. That's a state legislative responsibility. As we know, there's far too much reliance on local property taxes, and that's something that needs to be worked on. I've only been there for 4 years, so a long time before I got there were some well-intentioned efforts to fix this. I know that the Strickland team did some things that tried to fix it. Some of my Republican colleagues disagreed with that. I'm not expert on that plan because I wasn't serving at that time. I'm proud that we were able to do a real increase in school funding last year. It's not enough. But it was the largest increase in 10 years in state funding for education in Ohio. There's more to do. We have to put the partisanship aside and really look at how we fund education that's less reliant on local property taxes. Now, part of the concern with that, though, is as you get away from local funding and into more state funding, the concern is with that may come more state control. And so there's always that tug and pull. I'm open to ideas. I'm not an expert on education funding, but I fully recognize the problem.
Can I have one quick follow-up?
Absolutely.
Since you said that, several years ago I worked with a couple of committees in the state of Ohio, and we looked at, instead of having 188 school boards, having one county school board with a county but you would still have your local funding streams for like the Hudson, but one school board making the policies for the county. What would your opinion be on that?
We have 614 school districts in the state of Ohio. That is a huge number. There are states that are larger than us, like Florida, that have almost half that many. Now, that said, if you want to be tarred and feathered and run out of town, start talking about requiring school consolidation, right? So people start thinking about, well, they're the Minutemen and we're the Indians. We can't be on the same team. Well, you know what? That's something that needs to be thought about in a careful and deliberate way.
That's not what I was referring to.
You were talking about for funding.
For just one school, county school board, you still keep the funding in each district.
And there's
but
economies of scale there, and there's a good example of this down in Wayne County, where the Orville schools have set up a shared relationship with other surrounding school districts where they share some administrative responsibilities. They've got one superintendent that oversees the whole thing, and that seems to be working. So there's room for that kind of innovation. That's sort of on the cost side of the ledger. On the revenue side of the ledger, we can't be afraid to spend money on education. It costs money to educate and offer that quality education. I'm proud to have the support of the OEA this year, and that's one of the things that I've been working on them with. So,
Okay, I think that's it.
thank you so much.